Poor boy is humiliated. The next day, a team of reporters arrives at the school. Ethan Carter felt his heart race as his classmates shared their parents' professions. Each child spoke proudly about doctors, lawyers, business owners. His hands grew sweaty as he clutched the drawing he'd made of his father at work. When his turn came, the 8-year-old boy stood up slowly. His clothes were clean but visibly patched with care by his mother. "My dad is Robert Carter," Ethan began, his voice trembling. "He collects materials people throw away so they can be used again." Teacher Karen raised an eyebrow. Some classmates started whispering among themselves. "He's a garbage collector," Ethan finished, unaware those words would change his life forever. The room erupted in laughter. Kids pointed at him while making jokes about trash and dirt. Ethan felt tears burning his eyes, but refused to let them fall. "Quiet," said Teacher Karen, though her tone showed no outrage at the laughter. In fact, she seemed embarrassed by the boy's presence in her class. "My dad isn't just a collector," Ethan tried to explain, holding up his drawing. "He knows every material, how to sort them, the value of each thing. He teaches me about recycling and—" "That's enough, Ethan," the teacher interrupted. "Sit down, next." Madison, the daughter of the owner of the city's largest furniture store, stood up smiling. Her presentation about her businessman father was met with applause and praise from the teacher. Ethan lowered his head and tucked away his drawing. At that moment, he had no idea that sheet of paper would become the key to an unexpected turn of events. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. When class ended, Ethan hurried to pack his things and leave before his classmates could mock him further. But Tyler, the son of a famous lawyer, approached him with other boys. "Hey, trash collector," Tyler taunted. "Did you bring anything stinky in your backpack today?" "Leave him alone," said Sophia, one of Ethan's few friends. "He didn't do anything wrong." "Defending the stinky kid, Sophia," another boy laughed. "I bet his house is made of garbage too." Ethan clenched his fists. He wanted to defend his family, their small but clean home, his father's honest work. But the words wouldn't come. Teacher Karen watched from a distance but didn't intervene. In fact, she seemed relieved Ethan was the target instead of her having to handle the situation. "My dad works honestly," Ethan finally managed to whisper. "Working with garbage," Tyler sneered. "How disgusting." That's when Ethan could no longer hold back his tears. They streamed down his face as he ran out of the classroom, dropping his drawing on the floor. Teacher Karen picked up the paper and, without even looking, crumpled it and tossed it in the trash. To her, it was just another meaningless child's drawing from a boy who shouldn't have been at that private school. But what no one knew was that drawing held an extraordinary talent about to change everything. Ethan ran through the halls of St. Francis Academy, a prestigious institution in New York City's Upper East Side. His tears blurred his vision as he passed the portraits of distinguished alumni lining the walls. Principal Margaret Thompson saw him running and simply shook her head in disapproval. To her, Ethan was a problem that needed solving. The scholarship he'd earned for academic merit was, in her eyes, an unnecessary burden on the school's reputation. Mrs. Jenkins, the 62-year-old cleaning lady, watched the scene with a heavy heart. She had worked at the school for 15 years and had seen how some children faced prejudice every day. "Ethan," she called gently as he walked past her, "are you okay?" Ethan stopped and wiped his face with his shirt sleeve. "I'm fine, Mrs. Jenkins. I just want to go home." "Have your parents arrived yet?" she asked, knowing Ethan usually waited alone. "My dad will be late. He's working in the southern part of the city today. My mom will come get me when she leaves the factory." Mrs. Jenkins felt a pang in her chest. She knew the Carter family's routine well. Robert left before sunrise with his makeshift cart to collect recyclables from the streets. Catherine worked at a sewing factory and still cleaned 2 houses afterward to make ends meet. "Do you want to stay here with me while you wait?" Mrs. Jenkins offered. "You can help me organize the library." Ethan nodded. The library was his favorite place in school, the only spot where he truly felt at peace. Meanwhile, in the classroom, Teacher Karen was finishing grading some assignments. She stood up to empty her desk trash when she noticed Ethan's crumpled drawing on top. Curious, she unfolded the paper. What she saw left her stunned. The drawing depicted his father, Robert, in astonishing detail for an 8-year-old. But it wasn't just the realism that stood out. It was the composition, the use of shadows, the expression on the man's face that showed dignity and pride in his work. In the bottom right corner, Ethan had drawn a small symbol, a star inside a circle, his artistic signature that no one had noticed yet. "Oh my," the teacher murmured. This is really impressive." But instead of acknowledging the talent of the boy she had humiliated, Karen felt something else, a mix of embarrassment and irritation. How could a child from that background draw better than her own kids, who took private art lessons? She crumpled the drawing again and tossed it back into the trash, deeper this time. "Just a fluke," she muttered to herself. "Any kid can scribble something that looks nice." What teacher Karen didn't know was that at that very moment, fate was setting in motion a twist that would begin the next day, right there, in that same school. The next morning, Ethan arrived at school with eyes still swollen from crying the night before. His mother, Catherine, had noticed his sadness, but he hadn't told her what happened. He didn't want to worry her more than she already was. Catherine Carter was 35, her face marked by a life of hard work. Yet her eyes always shone when she looked at her son, her greatest treasure and hope for a better future. "Sweetheart, remember, I'll be leaving the factory later today," she said, straightening his shirt. "You'll have to wait a little longer at school, okay?" "It's fine, Mum. Mrs. Jenkins said I can help her in the library." Catherine smiled. She knew her son loved books and had a thirst for knowledge that amazed her. Even though they couldn't afford books, Ethan read everything he could find. "You're my smart boy," she said, kissing his forehead. "Never forget that." Ethan nodded and walked into school. What he didn't know was that 3 news vans were already parked outside, with reporters and cameras preparing for a search that would change his life. Inside the main van, reporter Jessica Wilson, 40 and one of New York City's most respected investigative journalists, checked her notes one last time. "Are you sure it was this school?" she asked producer Michael Brooks. "Absolutely." The artist confirmed that the drawing was found in the trash at St. Francis Academy yesterday afternoon, and the description of the child who knows medical anatomy with such precision came from a reliable source. Jessica shook her head, still amazed by the story she was investigating. 3 days earlier, a famous artist named Henry Miller had approached the TV station with an unbelievable story. He said that while walking in disguise through the streets looking for inspiration, he bought a drawing from a recyclables collector for $5. The drawing showed such precise anatomical details that Henry took it to a doctor friend to examine. The doctor was shocked. The drawing displayed symptoms of a rare condition he had been trying to diagnose in his niece for months. The accuracy of the details helped save the child's life. When Henry went back to find the collector and discover who had made the drawing, the man said he found it in the trash of a school in the Upper East Side. He mentioned he always picked up colored papers that children threw away because he could sell them to collectors. "It's an incredible story," Jessica murmured. "A child with talent like that. We need to find them." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, outside the school, reporters were getting organized. Michael checked the cameras while Jessica rehearsed her approach. They knew they had to be careful when dealing with an educational institution. "Remember," Jessica told the team, "we're looking for a child with extraordinary drawing talent. Probably someone quiet, observant, the kind of child who goes unnoticed." Meanwhile, inside the school, Principal Margaret Thompson received a phone call that would send her into a panic. "Principal Margaret? This is the Department of Education. A TV crew is on its way to your school for a special report. Something about a talented child." "TV?" Margaret asked, her blood running cold. "What kind of report?" "I don't have details, just that they're looking for a child who made a drawing that helped in the medical field. It seems like something very positive for the school's image." Margaret hung up, her mind racing. A report about a talented child would be great for the school, especially if it was one of the children from influential families who studied there. She immediately thought of Madison, the daughter of a wealthy businessman who took private art lessons. Or maybe Tyler, whose lawyer father always praised his son's drawings. "Teacher Karen," she called over the intercom, "come to my office right away and bring examples of the students' best artwork." Karen arrived minutes later, carrying a folder with drawings from various students, but her eyes avoided looking directly at the principal. "Margaret, about this TV story. Can I ask what it's about?" "A child from this school made a drawing that impressed medical professionals. I need to know which of our talented students it could be." Karen's stomach turned. The image of Ethan's drawing, which she had thrown in the trash, flashed through her mind, but she quickly pushed it away. It couldn't be the poor boy, it must be a coincidence. "Well," she said, opening the folder, "here are Madison's works. She takes private lessons with a renowned instructor." Margaret examined the colorful, well-done drawings, but they were typical for her age. "What about Tyler? I know his father always praises his talent." Karen showed a few more pieces. "All good for 8-year-olds, but nothing extraordinary." That's when they heard loud voices in the hallway. The TV crew had arrived. "May we come in?" Jessica Wilson asked at the office door. "I'm Jessica Wilson from the television network. We're looking for a very special child who studies here." Margaret stood up with her most professional smile. "Of course, welcome. I'm Principal Margaret. How can I help you?" "We're searching for the author of an extraordinary drawing that was found in the trash at this school, a drawing with such precise medical details that it helped save a life." Karen's heart nearly stopped. She quickly glanced at Margaret, who kept smiling. "How wonderful!" exclaimed the principal. "We have many very talented children here. I'm sure we can help you." "The drawing was signed with a small symbol," Jessica explained. "A star inside a circle. Does that mean anything to you?" Karen felt her legs tremble. She remembered that symbol perfectly in the corner of Ethan's drawing, but how could she admit she'd thrown away something so important? "Star inside a circle," Margaret murmured. "Let me check with the teachers." Meanwhile, outside the office, Ethan walked down the hallway carrying books Mrs. Jenkins had asked him to organize. He saw the cameras and commotion, but kept walking quietly. Mrs. Jenkins, who was cleaning near the principal's office, overheard the whole conversation. Her eyes widened when she heard about the star symbol. She knew that symbol. She'd seen Ethan drawing it many times during breaks. The staff member hurried away, searching for the boy. She found him in the library, organizing books with the same care his father used when sorting recyclables. "Ethan," she whispered, "I need to talk to you." But before she could say more, they heard footsteps approaching. It was Teacher Karen with Principal Margaret and the reporters. "This is our library," Margaret said proudly, "where our most talented students often spend their time." Jessica looked around, and her eyes settled on Ethan. There was something about the boy that intrigued her, maybe the way he held the books with the same care as someone handling something precious. "What about you, sweetheart?" she asked gently. "Do you like to draw?" Ethan glanced at Teacher Karen, who made an almost imperceptible grimace, as if telling him not to say anything. "A little," he replied timidly. "What kind of things do you like to draw?" Ethan hesitated. He wanted to talk about his drawings of his father working, of the people he saw on the street, of the details he noticed in the world around him, but the teacher's expression intimidated him. "Just normal things," he murmured. Margaret quickly intervened. "Ethan is helping in the library today. How about we introduce you to some of our other standout art students?" She guided the group out of the library. Jessica looked back one last time, watching Ethan. There was something in his eyes she couldn't quite place. Mrs. Jenkins waited until everyone had left before approaching Ethan again. "Young man, do you know about a drawing with a star inside a circle?" Ethan looked up, surprised. "That's my signature. I always draw it on my work. Why?" "Ethan," she said urgently, "I think you need to know what's happening." And so, little by little, the truth began to emerge. But the path to it would be full of lies, painful revelations, and moments that would test the strength of a simple family against the power of those who wanted to hide the truth. Mrs. Jenkins told Ethan about the reporters searching for the author of a special drawing. The boy was confused when she mentioned the drawing had helped save a life. "But how, Mrs. Jenkins? I just draw things I see." "Sometimes we don't know the power we hold, child. You have a special eye, a way of seeing things others don't." Ethan thought about the drawing he had made of his father that the teacher had thrown in the trash. Could it have been that one? Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Margaret was showing Madison's work to the reporters. "This is Madison Williams, one of our most talented students, daughter of businessman James Williams. You must know him." Jessica examined the drawings carefully. They were pretty, very colorful, but something was missing. They lacked the depth or sharp observation she had hoped to find. "The drawings are lovely," she said diplomatically, "but what we're looking for has very specific characteristics, precise anatomical details, advanced use of shading." "Perhaps we could see other students' work," Michael suggested. That's when Karen had a desperate idea. If she couldn't show the real drawing, the one she had thrown away, maybe she could create an alternate story. "Actually," she said hesitantly, "I think I know who you're talking about. It's Tyler Smith, son of attorney Charles Smith. He has an impressive talent for anatomy." Margaret looked at Karen in surprise, but quickly caught on to the suggestion. "Of course, Tyler. Why didn't I think of him sooner?" "Can you show us some of his work?" Jessica asked. Karen felt panic rising. She didn't have any drawings by Tyler that compared to what Ethan had done. "Unfortunately, he took his best work home yesterday, but I can call him here to speak with you." Minutes later, Tyler was brought into the room. The 8-year-old boy, son of the influential lawyer, looked confused by all the attention. "Tyler," Margaret said with forced enthusiasm, "these people are here because of your special talent for drawing." "What talent?" Tyler asked honestly. Karen quickly stepped in. "Tyler, remember that special drawing you made, the one with medical details?" The boy stared at her blankly. "I don't remember making any drawing like that." Jessica began to suspect something. Her experience as an investigative journalist made her sense when something was off in a story. "Tyler," she said gently, "do you remember drawing a star inside a circle in any of your work?" "No, why would I draw that?" The silence in the room was awkward. Margaret and Karen exchanged nervous glances. "Maybe he's just nervous," Margaret tried to explain. "Children sometimes get shy around strangers." But Jessica had already made up her mind. Something wasn't right here. "How about we talk to some other students?" she suggested. "Maybe we can find clues by speaking with the children informally." That was exactly what Margaret and Karen didn't want to hear. "Well, our students are in class right now," Margaret stalled. "Maybe it's best not to interrupt." "Of course we understand," Jessica said. "How about we come back during recess? That way we can talk to them more naturally." There was no way to refuse without seeming suspicious. Margaret agreed, but as soon as the reporters left, she turned to Karen in desperation. "Karen, what's going on here? Why didn't Tyler know anything?" Karen took a deep breath. It was time to tell a version of the truth. "Margaret, I think I made a mistake. I think the real drawing was by another student." "Which student?" Karen hesitated before answering. "Ethan Carter." Margaret's face paled. "The scholarship boy, the trash collector's son? I saw a drawing of his yesterday. It was truly impressive, but I threw it away without realizing its importance." "You threw it away?" Margaret shouted. "How could you throw away a drawing that's bringing reporters to our school?" "I didn't know. It was just some poor kid making drawings." Margaret began pacing back and forth, desperate. The school had a reputation to uphold. If they found out that the talented child was the son of a garbage collector, not one of the students from important families, how would that affect the institution's image? "We need to resolve this," she finally said. "One way or another." "How?" "I don't know yet. But we can't let this situation spiral out of control." Meanwhile, Ethan remained in the library with Mrs. Jenkins. The employee had decided she needed to help the boy no matter what. "Ethan, do you have more drawings like the one you made of your father?" "I have a few at home." "But why do you ask?" "Because I think you're more special than you realize, young man, and maybe it's time for others to discover that too." Ethan didn't fully understand what was happening, but he trusted Mrs. Jenkins. She had always been kind to him when others ignored him. "Mrs. Jenkins, can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear." Why do people think my dad's job is bad? He helps the environment, reuses things others throw away. Shouldn't that be seen as something good? Mrs. Jenkins felt her heart tighten. How do you explain to a child the absurd prejudices of adults? Your father does very important work, Ethan. The problem isn't what he does, it's how some people choose to see things. But do you know what I've learned in 62 years of life? What? That the truth always finds a way to come out. Always. And she was right. The truth was about to emerge in a way no one expected. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Recess arrived and the reporters returned. Jessica watched the children playing in the yard, searching for signs of the true artist. Her attention was drawn again to Ethan, who sat alone under a tree, observing his classmates play. "Michael," she called to the producer, "see that boy over there? There's something different about him. The one in simpler clothes, why? The way he observes. Look at his eyes. He's not just looking, he's truly seeing every detail." Jessica carefully approached Ethan. "Hi, can I sit here?" Ethan nodded timidly. The reporter sat beside him on the grass. "Do you like observing people?" "I do," Ethan replied. "Every person has interesting things about them. The way they walk, how they move their hands, their facial expressions. And do you draw those things?" "I do." "But the teacher says they're just scribbles." Jessica felt a pang of indignation. "Who said that? I'm sure your drawings are much more than scribbles." "Teacher Karen. She said poor kids don't know how to make real art." The words hit Jessica like a slap. She looked at Ethan with new understanding. "Ethan, have you ever drawn a star inside a circle?" The boy's eyes lit up. "That's my signature. I draw it on all my work. My dad said every artist needs a signature." "Your dad said that?" "Yes. He finds lots of interesting things in his work. Sometimes he brings me old books or magazines with pretty pictures." Jessica felt she was on the right track. "Ethan, do you remember drawing a person with details of the human body? Maybe symptoms of an illness?" Ethan thought for a moment. "I drew Mrs. Murray, who works at the bakery near home. She always complains about strange pains and skin spots. I drew her showing where it hurt." "And what happened to that drawing?" "I brought it to school to show in science class, but the teacher didn't want to see it. Said it wasn't important and threw it in the trash." Bingo. Jessica knew she had found her answer. "Ethan, do you have other drawings like that one?" "I have a few at home." "But why are you asking?" Before Jessica could respond, Principal Margaret appeared with hurried steps. "Sorry to interrupt," she said with a forced smile, "but Ethan needs to return to class now." Jessica noticed the tension in the principal's voice. "Of course. Ethan, it was a pleasure talking to you. Maybe we can see each other again soon." As Ethan walked away, Margaret turned to Jessica. "I hope you understand that not all our children are prepared for this kind of attention. Some come from simpler backgrounds." "Simpler backgrounds," Jessica repeated, her voice heavy with disapproval. "Principal, talent doesn't have a social class." "Of course not," Margaret replied quickly. "I'm just concerned about the well-being of all our students." But Jessica had already made up her mind. She had found her story, and it wasn't just about a miraculous drawing. It was about prejudice, about how talent can be overlooked when it comes from unexpected places. "Principal, we'd like to speak with Ethan's parents." "His parents?" Margaret felt panic rising. "Well, they work a lot. They're very busy people. I'm sure they'll make time to talk about their son's special talent." Margaret knew she couldn't stall any longer, but a desperate idea began forming in her mind. If she couldn't hide Ethan, maybe she could control the narrative another way. That afternoon, Margaret urgently met with Karen and 2 other teachers in her office. "We need to talk about the situation with the reporters," she began. "It seems the drawing really was done by Ethan." "I know," Karen murmured. "So now what?" "Now we do whatever's necessary to protect this school's reputation," Margaret said firmly. "If Ethan is truly the artist, We'll make sure it's presented the right way." "How so?" asked the science teacher, Helen. "We'll say we always recognized Ethan's talent, that the school supported and encouraged his artistic development. We'll present ourselves as the ones who discovered and nurtured his gift." Karen shifted uncomfortably in her chair. "But that's not true. I treated the boy poorly." "What's true, Karen, is what we choose to say," Margaret replied coldly. "And our version is that we've always supported our talented students, regardless of social standing." "What if someone finds out what really happened?" "Who's going to find out?" Margaret asked. "Ethan is just a child. His parents are simple people who'll be grateful for the attention, and we control the narrative here at school." But Margaret hadn't counted on Mrs. Jenkins, who had overheard the entire conversation outside the door. The cleaning lady knew she had to act. Ethan deserved the truth to be told, not some twisted version that would only benefit the school. That evening, Mrs. Jenkins went to the humble Carter home in the South Bronx, in the southern part of New York City. The house was small but impeccably clean and tidy. Robert had just returned from another long day of work. Even exhausted, he always made time to talk to Ethan about his day at school. "How was it today, champ?" he asked, ruffling his son's hair affectionately. "It was different, Dad. There were men with cameras at school, and a pretty lady who talked to me." "Cameras?" Catherine asked, coming in from the kitchen where she was making dinner. "What for?" Ethan told them about his conversation with Jessica, though he still didn't fully understand what was happening. Then they heard a soft knock at the door. Robert opened it and found Mrs. Jenkins, whom he recognized from the few times he'd picked Ethan up from school. "Mrs. Jenkins," Catherine said, surprised. "Please come in. Did something happen to Ethan?" "I can say yes and no," replied the employee. "I need to tell you something very important about your son." She sat at the simple kitchen table and told the whole story. The drawing thrown in the trash, the reporters searching for the artist, the lies from the principal and the teacher. "You don't understand," she said emotionally. "Ethan's drawing saved a child's life. He has an extraordinary talent that these people are trying to hide or steal." Robert and Catherine fell silent, processing the information. "My son saved a life?" asked Catherine with tears in her eyes. "He did. And now the school wants to take advantage of it, pretending they always supported his talent." Ethan, who had heard everything, approached his parents. "Dad, Mom, I didn't do anything special. I just drew what I saw." Robert hugged his son tightly. "Son, you did something very special, and now we'll make sure everyone knows the truth." "How?" asked Catherine. "We're simple people. Who's going to believe us over the school?" "I have an idea," said Mrs. Jenkins, "but it'll take courage from you." "Anything," replied Robert. "My son deserves the truth to be told." "Then let's show those reporters who Ethan really is, and we'll do it our way." It was the beginning of a battle between the truth and the powerful who wanted to control it. But Ethan wasn't alone. He had a family who loved him, and people like Mrs. Jenkins, who believed in justice. The war was just beginning, and the 8-year-old boy was about to discover that his talent was far more powerful than any lie. The next morning, Jessica Wilson arrived early at the news station. Something about the situation at the school had bothered her all night. Her journalistic instincts told her there was more to the story. "Michael," she called to the producer, "I need you to research St. Francis Academy." "What kind of research?" "I want to know about their inclusion policies, cases of discrimination, anything related to our story." "You think something's wrong?" "I think we're only seeing the surface, and something tells me the truth is more complicated than it seems." Meanwhile, at the school, Margaret was implementing her plan. She had asked Karen to prepare a presentation about how the school always supported talented students from all social classes. "Remember," she told the gathered teachers, "when the reporters return, our story is that Ethan was always recognized for his talent, that we offered him special support." "But that's a lie," protested Helen, the science teacher. "I saw how Ethan was treated yesterday." "Helen," Margaret replied firmly, "do you want to keep working here?" The threat was clear. Helen lowered her head, but inside she felt sick about the situation. At that moment, Ethan arrived at school with his parents. It was rare to see Robert and Catherine there during class hours, and other parents began whispering. Robert wore his best clothes, simple but clean and carefully pressed by Catherine. She had combed Ethan's hair with extra care, as if preparing him for something special. "We'd like to speak with the principal," Robert said at the front desk. The secretary, surprised, called Margaret. "Principal, Ethan's parents are here. They want to speak with you." Margaret felt a chill in her stomach. She hadn't expected this. "Send them up," she replied, trying to stay composed. Robert, Catherine, and Ethan entered the principal's office. Margaret greeted them with a forced smile. "How nice to see you. I imagine you're very proud of Ethan." "We're always proud of our son," Catherine replied with dignity. "But we'd like to understand what's happening." "Of course. Ethan is a very special child. We've always recognized his talent here at the school." Robert looked her straight in the eyes. "Principal, with all due respect, that's not true." "What do you mean?" asked Margaret, feigning surprise. "Our son came home crying yesterday. He told us how he was humiliated in class because of my job, and a staff member reached out to us last night to tell us the truth about what happened." Margaret felt her blood run cold. Mrs. Jenkins had interfered. "I don't know what you were told, but we were told Ethan's drawing was thrown in the trash," Catherine interrupted, "that he was humiliated and ignored. And now you want to take credit for his talent, as if you'd always supported him." The silence in the room was tense. Ethan watched everything with his sharp eyes, absorbing every detail of the situation. "Look," said Margaret, shifting tactics, "there may have been some misunderstandings, but what matters now is ensuring Ethan gets the recognition he deserves." "Real recognition," said Robert, "not based on lies." "What exactly do you want?" "We want the truth to be told," Catherine replied. "For them to admit how Ethan was really treated here, and we want to make sure this doesn't happen to other children." Margaret realized she was losing control of the situation. "You don't understand the implications of this," she said, showing her true colors. "This school has a reputation to uphold. We have influential parents who what?" asked Robert, his voice rising. "Are more important than our son." "That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant," Catherine cut in. "But you forgot one thing, Principal." "What?" "Talent doesn't ask about bank accounts before it shows up." At that moment, Jessica Wilson arrived at the school with her team. But this time, she wasn't just looking for a story. She came prepared to uncover the truth. "Good morning," she said at the front desk. "We'd like to speak with the principal and Ethan Carter again." "The principal is busy at the moment," the nervous secretary replied. "No problem. We can wait." That's when Mrs. Jenkins appeared. "Miss Jessica, can I speak with you for a moment?" Jessica followed her to a more private corner. "What do you have to tell me?" "I have the truth," Mrs. Jenkins answered, "and I have proof." She showed Jessica a small recorder she carried in her pocket. "I recorded the conversation the principal and teachers had yesterday about how they planned to lie to you about Ethan." Jessica listened to part of the recording and her eyes widened. "Why are you doing this?" "Because Ethan is a special boy who deserves justice, and because in 62 years of life I've learned that staying silent in the face of injustice makes you complicit." "Are you willing to say this on camera?" "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to protect that boy." Jessica smiled. Now she had all the pieces for a complete story. "Then let's go talk to that principal, but this time with all the cards on the table." The final confrontation was about to happen, and Ethan, unaware, was at the center of a battle that would change not only his life, but also how that school treated its most vulnerable students. When Jessica and her team entered the principal's office, they found the Carter family still talking with Margaret. The tension in the air was palpable. "Sorry to interrupt," Jessica said, "but I think it's time we laid all our cards on the table." Margaret forced a smile. "Of course. We were just discussing Ethan's wonderful talent." "That's great," Jessica replied, "because I'd like to understand better how the school has supported that talent." "Well, Ethan has always been a special student here." "Principal," Jessica interrupted, "before we continue, I'd like to play something I just heard." She picked up Mrs. Jenkins' recorder and pressed play. Margaret's voice echoed through the room. "Let's say we always recognized Ethan's talent, that the school supported and encouraged his artistic development. We'll present ourselves as the ones responsible for discovering and nurturing this talent." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret's face turned red. How did you get this?" "Does it matter?" Jessica asked. "What matters is we have a recording of you planning to lie about how Ethan was treated." Robert stood up from his chair. "So it was true, you were going to lie about our son." Margaret tried to compose herself. "You don't understand. This school has a reputation. And that reputation is more important than a child's dignity," Catherine asked indignantly. Ethan, who had stayed quiet until then, spoke for the first time. "Why don't you like my dad's work?" The simple, direct question cut like a knife. Everyone looked at the 8-year-old boy, who stared back with honest, hurt eyes. "Ethan," Margaret began. "My dad helps the planet," the boy continued. "He takes things that were going to be thrown away and makes them useful again. Why is that bad?" Jessica felt her eyes well up. The simplicity and truth in the child's words were more powerful than any adult speech. "Your dad does very important work, Ethan," she said, "and you're right. There's nothing bad about it." "Then why did the teacher say poor kids don't know how to make art?" Margaret closed her eyes. Every word from Ethan was like a nail in the coffin of her career. "Ethan," Jessica said, "would you mind showing us some of your drawings?" "Can I draw something now?" he asked. "Of course." Ethan took a sheet of paper from Margaret's desk and began to draw. In just a few minutes, he created a striking portrait of the very situation, himself at the center, surrounded by adults, but with an expression of dignity that contrasted with the tense faces of the others. In the bottom right corner, he drew his signature, the star inside the circle. Jessica picked up the drawing and showed it to the camera. "This is Ethan Carter, 8 years old, son of Robert, a worker who collects recyclable materials, and Catherine, who works in a factory. Ethan made a drawing that helped save a child's life. But yesterday, this same Ethan was humiliated at his school because of his father's honest work." She turned to Margaret. "Principal, would you like to comment on this?" Margaret knew there was no turning back. Her career was over. We made a mistake." "A mistake?" Robert asked. "Humiliating my son was a mistake." "It was more than a mistake," said Catherine. "It was cruelty." Jessica continued with the questions. "And the teacher who threw the drawing in the trash, where is she?" Karen, who had been called in, entered the room with her head down. "Teacher Karen," Jessica said, "do you remember throwing Ethan's drawing in the trash yesterday?" "Yes," she murmured. "Why?" I didn't think it was important." "A drawing that saved a life wasn't important?" "I didn't know it would save a life," Karen replied defensively. "But did you know it was a well-done drawing? That it showed talent?" Karen hesitated before answering. "Yes, I knew." "And you still threw it away?" "Yes." "Why?" The silence stretched. Karen knew any answer would be damning. "Because he's the son of a trash collector," she finally admitted. The confession landed like a bomb in the room. Ethan looked at the teacher with deep hurt in his eyes. "That's it?" he asked. "You don't like me just because of my dad's job?" Karen couldn't meet the boy's gaze. Jessica knelt to Ethan's level. "Ethan, you know your dad does very important work, right?" "I know, and I'm proud of him." "And you really should. He's an honest, hard-working man, and you're a very talented and special boy." "Even though I'm poor?" "Especially because you're poor," Jessica replied. "Because you've learned to see beauty where others only see problems. You've learned to value simple things, and that's what makes you an extraordinary artist." Ethan smiled for the first time in 2 days. "Can I make more drawings?" "You can make as many drawings as you want, and now everyone will know just how talented you are." Robert hugged his son, tears in his eyes. "My champion. Daddy is so proud of you." "I'm proud of you too, Dad." Catherine joined the family hug. They were united against the whole world. Jessica turned to the cameras for her closing remarks. "This is a story about talent and prejudice, about how an extraordinary child almost had his gift ignored because of his father's profession. But it's also a story about justice and truth, Because Ethan Carter taught us today that a person's worth isn't measured by their bank account, but by the size of their heart and the talent they carry inside. The report aired that same night and caused a national uproar. The network's phone didn't stop ringing with people wanting to know how to help Ethan and his family. But the real transformation was yet to come. And it would start in the least expected place, inside St. Francis Academy itself. In the days following the report, St. Francis Academy became absolute chaos. Outraged parents called demanding explanations, others withdrew their children, and the media camped outside the school. Margaret was removed from her position on the second day after the report. The Department of Education opened an investigation into discrimination and mistreatment of students. Karen was also suspended, pending a broader investigation into her teaching practices. Ethan didn't return to school in the first few days. The family decided he needed time to recover emotionally from the trauma. "Son," Robert said as they ate breakfast on a Thursday morning, "we're going to have some special visitors today." "Who, Dad?" "People who want to meet you and see your drawings." It was true. Since the report, Ethan had received invitations from art schools, scholarship offers, and even proposals from publishers interested in making a book of his drawings. The first visitor was Henry Miller, the famous artist who had bought Robert's original drawing. "Ethan," he said, crouching to the boy's height, "I wanted to meet you in person and thank you." "Thank me for what?" "Your drawing helped save my niece's life, and it taught me something important about real art." "What?" "That true art comes from the heart, and you, young man, have a very special heart." Henry showed Ethan the original drawing, carefully preserved in a frame. "This drawing is worth a lot of money now," he said, "but I want to give it back to you. It belongs to the one who created it." Ethan took the drawing and looked at his work with new eyes. "I can make more," he said simply. "I know you can, and I'll help you make many more." The second visitor was Beatrice Thompson, director of one of the most prestigious art schools in New York City. "Ethan," she said, "our school would like to offer you a full scholarship. You could develop your talent with the best teachers in the country." Ethan looked at his parents. "Is it far from home?" "No," Beatrice replied, "and your parents could visit whenever they want." "What about my friends from my current school?" "Well, you'd make new friends there." Ethan thought for a moment. "I want to develop my talent," he finally said, "but I don't want to forget where I come from." "What do you mean?" Beatrice asked. "I want to use my art to help people like my family, to show that ordinary people matter too." Robert smiled proudly. His son not only had artistic talent, but also wisdom in his heart. The third visit was the most unexpected. Tyler, the boy who had led the teasing at school, arrived with his parents. "Ethan," said Tyler, clearly nervous, "I came to apologize." Ethan looked at him curiously. "Why?" "Because I said horrible things about you and your dad, and now I know I was wrong." "How do you know?" "Because my dad explained that your father's work is really important, and because I saw on TV how talented you are." Ethan extended his hand to Tyler. "Want to be my friend?" "You forgive me?" "Of course. Everyone deserves a second chance." Tyler's father, the lawyer Charles Smith, approached Robert. "Mr. Carter, I'd like to apologize too, and I'd like to offer my legal services free of charge in case you want to sue the school." Robert looked at Catherine and then at Ethan. "We don't want to sue anyone," he said. "We want this to be a lesson so it doesn't happen to other kids." "Even so," Charles insisted, "I'll follow the case to make sure real changes happen." Meanwhile, at St. Francis Academy, Mrs. Jenkins was called into the temporary principal's office. "Mrs. Jenkins," said the interim principal, Professor Regina, "you did a very brave thing by exposing this situation. I did what I had to do. And because of that, I'd like to make you an offer. How would you like to become our new student support coordinator, to make sure no child is discriminated against here again?" Mrs. Jenkins was surprised. "I don't have a teaching degree. You have something more important, heart and life experience, and now you also have the family's trust." Mrs. Jenkins accepted the offer. At 62, she was getting a new chance to make a difference in many children's lives. A week after the news report, Ethan decided he was ready to go back to school, but things were very different. When he arrived at the gate, he found a small crowd of reporters still camped there. But this time, instead of hiding, he waved at them with a smile. "Ethan," shouted a reporter, "how does it feel to be famous?" "I don't feel famous," he replied. "I feel happy because now I can use my art to help people." "What do you want to be when you grow up?" "I want to be an artist, but I also want to help my dad with his work sometimes, because his work is important too." Inside the school, the reception was completely different. Kids who had ignored him before now wanted to be his friends. Teachers who barely knew his name now greeted him warmly. But Ethan noticed that not all the attention was genuine. Some classmates wanted to be his friends only because he was famous. Some teachers were kind only because they were being watched. During recess, he sat under the same tree where he always used to sit. Mrs. Jenkins approached. "How are you feeling, young man?" "Confused," Ethan admitted. "Some people are being nice to me now, but I don't know if it's real. And how can you find out? I think with time I'll know who the real friends are." "Very wise. And you know what else?" "What?" "Real friends are the ones who liked you before you were famous." Ethan smiled. "Like Sophia. She was always my friend." "Exactly. And like your parents, who always believed in you." "And like you too." Mrs. Jenkins felt her eyes grow damp. "That's true, and I'll always believe in you." That afternoon, Ethan had a special surprise. Jessica Wilson returned to the school, but this time not to do a report. She came with a proposal. "Ethan," she said, "my team and I are creating a special television program about talented children from different social backgrounds. Would you like to be our first young host?" "Host?" "You'd help tell the stories of other children who have special talents, but are overlooked because of their social circumstances." Ethan looked at his parents. "Can I help other kids like me?" "You sure can," Jessica replied. "Your story showed so many people that talent knows no social class." "Then I accept." And so began a new chapter in Ethan's life. He kept studying, developing his art, but he also became a voice for children who were ignored or discriminated against. 2 months after the initial report, St. Francis Academy had completely changed. New anti-discrimination policies were implemented, new teachers were hired, and Mrs. Jenkins had created a support program for students from less privileged families. Ethan had become not just a respected student, but also a symbol of how the school was changing for the better. One Friday afternoon, he was in the library when Henry Miller arrived for one of his regular art mentoring visits. "Ethan, I have a surprise for you," the artist said. "What surprise?" "Remember the girl whose life your drawing helped save?" "I do. Jessica told me about her. She wants to meet you." The following Saturday, Ethan and his parents went to the hospital where the little girl, 6-year-old Anna Grace, was recovering. She had undergone successful treatment for the rare condition Ethan had unknowingly drawn. "Are you the boy who helped me?" Anna Grace asked in a sweet voice. "I just drew a picture," Ethan replied shyly. "But your drawing helped the doctors figure out what was wrong with me. You saved me." Ethan felt an emotion unlike anything he'd ever experienced before. He realized his art could truly make a difference in people's lives. "Can I draw you now?" he asked. "Yes." Ethan sketched Anna Grace smiling, with all the medical equipment around her transformed into flowers and butterflies. It was an image of hope and healing. "This is for you to keep," he said, handing her the drawing. "Thank you," she said, hugging the paper. "Now I have a magic drawing." "It's not magic," Ethan corrected. "It's made with care." "Then it is magic," Anna Grace insisted. "Because care is magic," Ethan smiled. Maybe she was right. That night at home, Ethan was drawing at his desk when his father approached. "Son, can I ask you something?" "Sure, Dad." "Are you happy with everything that's happened?" Ethan stopped drawing and thought about the question. "I'm happy I can help others with my art now, and I'm happy people know your work is important." "And you're not sad about that bad situation at school?" "I'm sad it happened," Ethan answered with wisdom beyond his 8 years. "But I'm also grateful." "Grateful?" "Because it taught me that it doesn't matter how people treat me. What matters is how I treat them. Robert hugged his son tightly. You're very wise, champ. I learned from you and Mom. What did you learn? That people's worth isn't in what they have, but in who they are. Catherine, who'd been listening from the kitchen, came over and joined the hug. And we're a family that loves each other, she said. And works honestly, Robert added. And never gives up, Ethan finished. 6 months later, Ethan was preparing for another episode of the television show he hosted with Jessica. The program Hidden Talents had already discovered and helped dozens of talented children from humble backgrounds. Ethan, said Jessica backstage, do you know you've become a hero to many children in the United States? I'm no hero, he replied. I'm just a boy who draws. But your drawings are changing so many lives. It was true. The book with Ethan's drawings had been published, and all the proceeds were donated to programs supporting underprivileged children. He had also created an awareness campaign about the importance of recycling workers. Jessica, Ethan said, can I tell you a secret? Of course. My dream isn't to be famous. What is your dream? To open a free art school for poor children, so they can discover their talents too. And do you think you'll make it happen? I will. Because I've learned that when you have a good dream and work toward it, help always comes along the way. How so? Like Mr. Henry, who teaches me art, like you, who gave me a voice on television, like Mrs. Jenkins, who had the courage to tell the truth, like my parents, who always believed in me. You're right, Jessica smiled. And you know what else? What? You're already changing the world, one drawing at a time. That night, after another successful show, Ethan returned home. The same small, simple house in the South Bronx, where he had now turned a tiny room into an art studio. He found his father coming home from work, as usual. But now Robert arrived with a different smile on his face. After the feature story, he had received recognition from the city for his environmental work and even invitations to speak at schools about recycling. How was the show today, champ? It was good, Dad. Good. We helped a girl who makes clay sculptures. Her parents thought it was a waste of time. And now she's going to study at an art school, and her parents understood that talent is a gift that shouldn't be wasted. Catherine came home from the factory where she still worked, but now only one shift. With the extra income from Ethan's projects, she could spend more time at home. My men, she said, hugging her husband and son. How was your day? Productive, Robert replied. Collected a lot of material today, and got another invitation to speak at a private school. That's wonderful. And you, Ethan? She asked. Helped another child discover they're special. And you? Do you know you're special? I do, Mom. But not because of fame, because of the family I have. That night, before bed, Ethan drew once more. This time, he drew his family, himself in the middle, with his father on one side and his mother on the other. In the background, he sketched the school Mrs. Jenkins, Jessica, Henry, and all the people who had become important in his journey. In the bottom right corner, as always, he drew his signature, the star inside the circle. But this time, he added something new. Around the star, he drew tiny hearts, because he had learned that true talent comes from the heart. A year later, Ethan stood before an audience of over 1,000 people at Lincoln Center. It was the official launch of his foundation, Art for Everyone, which would offer free art classes to children from modest families. When I was just Ethan, the son of a recycling worker, he began at the microphone, I thought my only choice was to stay invisible. Now I know we all have a light inside us, and that light doesn't ask if we're rich or poor before it shines. The audience applauded, moved. My art taught me that we can turn pain into beauty, rejection into strength, and dreams into reality. And now I want to help other children discover that magic too. On the Foundation's first day, 50 children signed up. Ethan, now 9 years old, moved among them, helping and teaching, but mostly learning. Professor Ethan, called out a 7-year-old girl, I don't know how to draw. Everyone can draw, he replied. You just need to learn to see. What do you mean? Look at that flower over there. What do you see? A yellow flower. Look again. What shape are the petals? How does the light hit them? Is there a drop of water? The girl looked more closely. Wow, there are so many details. Now draw what you're seeing, not what you think a flower should look like. And so, Ethan discovered that teaching was just as rewarding as learning. That afternoon, after classes at the foundation, Ethan went to visit St. Francis Academy. It had been a while since he'd been there, but he wanted to see how things were going. He found Mrs. Jenkins in her new classroom, organizing support activities for students. "Ethan," she exclaimed, hugging him. "I've missed you, my boy." "Hi, Mrs. Jenkins, how are things here?" "Much better. Do you know how many children came for help this month because they felt discriminated against?" "How many?" "Zero. For the first time in 15 years of working here, zero." Ethan smiled. "That means things have really changed." "They have. And a lot of that is thanks to you." "No. It's thanks to you. I just drew. You had the courage." "Ethan, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you angry about how you were treated here?" Ethan thought about the question. "I'm not angry. I'm sad for the other kids who went through it before me. But I'm also hopeful because now it won't happen anymore." "You're very wise for your age. I've learned that holding on to anger only hurts us. It's better to use that energy to do good things." Before leaving the school, Ethan stopped by the library where it had all begun. There was Sophia, his first true friend, reading a book. "Sophia! Ethan!" She ran to hug him. "You disappeared. I've been busy with the foundation, but I brought something for you." He handed her a drawing he'd made especially for her, the two of them sitting under the courtyard tree, but surrounded by all the school's children playing together without distinction. "It's beautiful," Sophia exclaimed, "but is it really like that now?" "It's getting there, and it'll get even better." "How do you know?" "Because when people learn to see the beauty in each other, they can't go back to just seeing flaws." Sophia held the drawing tenderly. "Ethan, are you still my friend even though you're famous?" "Of course I am. True friendship doesn't change." "That's good, because I'm really proud to be your friend, and I'm proud to be yours too." 2 years later, Ethan was turning 11. The Art for Everyone Foundation had already helped over 1,000 children and opened branches in 3 cities. Ethan still lived in the same modest house with his parents, still studied at St. Francis Academy, which was now a model of social inclusion, and was still the same humble, observant boy he'd always been. But one thing had changed. He now knew exactly what his purpose in life was. At his birthday party, held in the Foundation's hall with all the children who studied art there, Ethan gave a heartfelt speech. "When I was 8, he said, I thought being different was a bad thing. Now I know being different is a gift. Each of us has something unique to offer the world." "And what do you offer?" shouted one of the kids. "I offer the hope that everyone can discover their talents. And I offer proof that where you're born doesn't determine how far you can go." "And us?" asked another child. "What can we offer?" "You can offer your own unique talents. Every drawing, every sculpture, every creative idea of yours can change someone's life." The party continued with artistic performances by the children. Ethan watched with eyes shining with pride and joy. Robert approached his son. "Son, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, Dad." "When you were born, I made a wish to the heavens." "What wish?" "I wished for you to be happy and to make a difference in the world." "And what do you think now?" "I think my wish was granted twice over." Ethan hugged his father. "Dad, can I tell you a secret too?" "Of course. My greatest pride isn't being famous or having a foundation." "What is it?" "It's being your son and Mom's. You both taught me that true value comes from character, not a bank account. And you learned that lesson well." "I did. And now, I teach it to other kids." Catherine joined the embrace of the 2 most important men in her life. "My family," she said with tears of joy, "my greatest treasure." "We may not be rich in money," said Ethan, "but we're rich in love." "And that's worth more than all the gold in the world," Robert added. 3 years had passed since that fateful day at school when Ethan was humiliated. Now, at 11 years old, he had not only become a nationally recognized artist, but also a symbol of hope for children across the United States. The Art for Everyone Foundation had grown so much that it now operated in 15 cities and had discovered hundreds of young talents. Ethan remained directly involved, visiting the branches and mentoring other children. One Tuesday morning, Ethan was in his home art studio when he received a special call. "Ethan," said the familiar voice of Jessica Wilson, "I have amazing news for you." "What news?" "You've been nominated for the National Youth Social Impact Award. You're the first 11-year-old boy to receive this honor." Ethan was silent for a moment. "Ethan, are you there?" "I am. It's just, this is so big." "You deserve it, Ethan. Everything you've done over the past 3 years deserves this recognition." "But I didn't do it alone. So many people helped me, and you'll get to thank them in your acceptance speech." "What do you mean?" "The ceremony will be broadcast across the country. You'll have a unique opportunity to speak to millions of people." Ethan felt the weight of the moment. He knew he had to use this platform to keep helping other children. On the night of the ceremony, held at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C., Ethan was backstage with his family. Robert wore his best suit, bought especially for the occasion. Catherine looked beautiful in a simple yet elegant blue dress. "Son," Robert said, "no matter what happens out there, we're already proud of you." "Very proud," Catherine added. "But remember, you'll always be our little boy." "I always will be," Ethan smiled. When his name was called, Ethan walked onto the stage with steady steps. As he looked at the audience, he saw hundreds of well-dressed people, but he also saw in the front rows the children from his foundation who had been specially invited. 3 years ago, he began into the microphone, "I was just an invisible boy who was humiliated because of my father's honest work. Today I'm not here because I'm special, but because I discovered that we all are." The audience was completely silent, absorbing every word. "This award isn't mine. It belongs to every child who believed in their dreams even when others said it was impossible. It belongs to teachers like Mrs. Jenkins, who have the courage to stand up for what's right. It belongs to journalists like Jessica Wilson, who use their voices to give voice to the voiceless." Ethan looked at his parents in the crowd. "But most of all, this award belongs to my father, Robert, who taught me that honest work always has value. And to my mother, Catherine, who taught me that love is the most powerful force in the world." Tears welled in the eyes of many in the audience. "I want to use this moment to ask everyone listening, look at the children around you. Really look. Because inside each of them could be hidden a talent that might change the world. But that talent will only emerge if we give these children what every child deserves: respect, opportunity, and love." My story could have been different if that drawing hadn't been found by chance. How many other stories are being lost because we don't give children like me a chance? How many talents are being wasted because we judge people by their social status instead of looking at their hearts? Ethan paused, looking straight into the cameras. "I have a dream. I dream of a United States where every child, rich or poor, has the chance to discover and develop their talents, where the doctor's son and the garbage collector's son are treated with the same respect, where education is about shaping better human beings, not perpetuating prejudices." This award is a symbol that we're on the right path, but we still have much work ahead, and I invite each of you to be part of this change, because when we change a child's life, we change the future of an entire society. Ethan raised the trophy. "On behalf of all the children still waiting for their chance, thank you. Let's keep working so no child is ever invisible again." The audience erupted in applause that lasted over 5 minutes. Many were openly crying. When Ethan stepped off the stage, he was surrounded by journalists, famous artists, politicians, and educators who wanted to congratulate him and offer support for his projects. But the first person he looked for was Mrs. Jenkins, who had been the evening's special guest. "Mrs. Jenkins," he said, hugging her, "thank you for having the courage. Thank you, young man, for teaching me it's never too late to do the right thing. We did it together, and we'll keep doing it." That night, after all the ceremonies and interviews, Ethan returned home with his parents. The same small, simple house where it all began. "Son," said Catherine, "do you realize what you've achieved?" "I realize I've gained a platform to help other children." "It's more than that," said Robert. "You've earned the respect of the entire country." "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Of course. The respect that matters most to me is yours and Mom's." "And you've always had our respect," said Catherine, "from day one." "I know, and that gave me the strength to get here." Ethan went to his room and looked at the wall where his first drawings hung, including the one of his father working, that had started this whole journey. He took a fresh sheet of paper and began to draw. This time he drew all the children from his foundation, each developing their unique talent. In the center, he drew a large tree with many branches, representing how one act of courage, Mrs. Jenkins, had borne fruit that kept growing. In the bottom right corner, as always, he drew his signature, the star inside the circle, now surrounded by the small hearts he had added. But this time, he included something new, tiny hands reaching out from the star, symbolizing how true talent always seeks to help others. 5 years had passed since that traumatic day at school. Ethan was now 13 and had become one of the country's most respected voices advocating for children's rights. The Art for Everyone Foundation had expanded to 50 cities and discovered over 5,000 young talents. Many of those youths were now teachers at the foundation itself, creating a virtuous cycle of talent discovery and development. Ethan still painted and drew, but now he also wrote books, gave speeches, and even composed music about social inclusion and nurturing talent. One Saturday morning, Ethan was at the foundation's original location when he received an unexpected visit. It was Anna Grace, the girl whose life his first drawing had helped save. Now 11 years old, she was accompanied by her parents. "Ethan," she exclaimed, running to hug him, "I finally got to visit you." "Anna Grace, how are you?" "Completely healed. And look," she opened a folder. "I started drawing too." Ethan examined Anna Grace's drawings. They were portraits of doctors and nurses, all with expressions of kindness and dedication. "They're beautiful. Why do you draw medical professionals?" "Because I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to help other kids like you helped me." "You'll be an amazing doctor. And you'll always be my hero." "I'm nobody's hero," Ethan said, kneeling to meet her eye level. "I'm just someone who realized we all have the power to help others." "So, can everyone be a hero? Everyone can make a difference in someone's life." Anna Grace's parents approached. "Ethan," said her father, a doctor named Dr. Richard, "your story changed our lives too." "How so?" "After what happened to Anna Grace, we created a program at the hospital to encourage young patients to develop artistic talents during treatment." "That's wonderful." "And Anna Grace's mother," he continued, "founded an NGO that brings art therapy to children's hospitals." Ethan smiled. This was how real change happened, one person inspiring another, creating an endless chain of transformation. That afternoon, Ethan visited his parents at work. Robert was now managing a large recycling center the city had established, inspired by his pioneering efforts. Catherine had returned to school and was studying education, dreaming of becoming a teacher. "Dad," Ethan said, finding Robert organizing a team of new waste collectors, "how does it feel to be recognized for the work you've always done?" "It feels good," Robert replied. "But what makes me proudest isn't the recognition. It's seeing our work inspire policies that improve lives for so many workers." "And how do you feel about Mom going back to school?" "Proud. Your mother always wanted to teach but had to quit studying to work. Now she can fulfill that dream." "What makes you proudest of everything that's happened?" Robert paused and looked at his son. "What makes me proudest is seeing you remain the same humble, generous boy you've always been. Fame hasn't changed your heart. I learned from you that character doesn't change with circumstances." "And where did you learn that?" "By watching you work honestly, even when others looked down on you. By seeing Mom study at night after working all day. You taught me real values don't depend on what others think of us." Robert hugged his son with pride. That evening, around the same simple table where they'd always shared meals, Ethan made a special announcement. "Dad, Mom, I have something to tell you." "What is it, son?" Catherine asked. "I received an invitation to study at a prestigious university in the United States, with a full scholarship." "That's wonderful," Catherine exclaimed. "Will you accept?" "No." "What do you mean, no?" Robert asked, surprised. "Because my place is here. My country is the United States, and this is where I can make the biggest difference." "But son, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." "Dad, the real once-in-a-lifetime opportunity is using my talent to help American kids in need. I can study art at universities here, and I can keep expanding the foundation." "Are you sure?" Catherine asked. "Absolutely." "Besides," Ethan smiled, "I don't want to be far from the best parents in the world." "Oh, son!" Catherine hugged him, tears in her eyes. "Ethan," Robert said, "are you certain you won't regret this?" "Dad, do you regret choosing to work honestly even when others criticized you?" "Never." "Then I won't regret choosing to stay where I can make the most difference either." That night, before going to sleep, Ethan wrote in his diary, "Today marks 5 years since that day at school. Sometimes I wonder how different my life would be if that humiliation had never happened. Maybe I would have never discovered that my art could help people. Maybe I would have never started the foundation. Maybe I would have never learned that our greatest strength comes from the hardest moments. I'm not saying I'm grateful for the pain I felt. No child should go through that. But I am grateful for turning that pain into purpose." Today, Anna Grace visited me. Seeing her healthy and full of her own dreams reminded me why I do what I do. Every child we help discover their talent is a victory against prejudice and exclusion. Dad and Mom are still my heroes. They taught me that greatness has nothing to do with fame or money. It's about character and the impact we have on others' lives. Tomorrow begins a new week at the Foundation. More children discovering their special. More families realizing talent knows no social class. Another step toward the United States we dream of. My signature is still the star inside the circle, but now I understand its true meaning. We're all unique stars, but we only truly shine when we're connected to one another. 10 years had passed since the day that changed everything. Ethan was now 18 and graduating high school. The Art for Everyone Foundation had become one of the largest youth talent development organizations in the country. At graduation, Ethan was invited to speak as the class valedictorian. When he stepped onto the stage at St. Francis Academy, the same school where he'd been humiliated years before, he felt the weight of how far he'd come. In the audience were his parents, Mrs. Jenkins, now the school's academic director, Jessica Wilson, Henry Miller, and hundreds of children whose lives had been touched by his work. "Dear classmates and families," Ethan began, "when I first entered this school 10 years ago, I was just an invisible boy with a dream to draw. Today I graduate not just with academic knowledge, but with the certainty that true education is about shaping better human beings." He looked into the crowd, recognizing familiar faces from a decade of transformation. "This school taught me some of the most valuable lessons of my life. Not all of them were easy. Some came through pain and injustice, but everyone mattered. Because they taught me that how we respond to challenges defines who we become." Ethan spotted Tyler in the audience, now his friend and a volunteer at the foundation. "I learned that forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's choosing not to let the past dictate our future. I learned that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the right thing even when we're afraid." Mrs. Jenkins wiped a tear from her eye. "But most of all, I learned that we all have a unique gift to offer the world, and our responsibility isn't just to nurture that gift, but to use it to lift others up." Ethan held up his diploma. "This diploma represents not just my education, but the transformation of an entire community. Today, this school is a model of inclusion. Today, hundreds of children know their dreams are valid, no matter where they come from. Today, we've proven that change is possible when good people come together for a greater purpose. To my fellow graduates, you hold the power to continue this change. Whatever path you choose, remember that true greatness lies in lifting others as you rise. To the children listening, you are unique stars in a universe that needs each of your light. Never let anyone dim your shine. Your dreams are valid, your talents are real, and you deserve every opportunity to develop them. Ethan looked directly at his parents. And to my family, thank you for teaching me that true values don't change with circumstances, for showing me that honest work always has dignity, for loving me unconditionally and giving me the strength to turn pain into purpose. The audience rose in an emotional standing ovation. Ethan stepped off the stage straight into his parents' arms. "Son," said Robert with tears in his eyes, "you've become the man we always dreamed you'd be." "No, Dad," Ethan replied. "I became the man you taught me to be." After the ceremony, Ethan made one last visit to the room where it all began. The school library had been renovated and was now called the Ethan Carter Library, Talent Space. Mrs. Jenkins found him there flipping through an art book. "Will you miss this place?" she asked. "I'll miss this chapter," Ethan answered, "but I'm excited for what's ahead." "And what's ahead?" "I'll study art and education in college. I want to become an even better teacher, and I want to expand the foundation to other countries in Latin America. Always thinking of helping more people. Mrs. Jenkins, can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear." "Do you regret recording that conversation 10 years ago?" "Never. It was the best decision of my life." "Why?" "Because it proved that an ordinary person can make a difference when they have the courage to act." "You're not ordinary. You're extraordinary." "Ethan, we're all extraordinary when we choose to do the right thing." That evening, Ethan threw a party at the foundation to celebrate his graduation. Everyone who had been part of his journey was there. Family, friends, mentors, and especially the children who now called the foundation home. During the party, one of the youngest boys approached him. "Mr. Ethan, is it true you were humiliated like us?" "It's true." "And how did you become this important person?" Ethan knelt to meet the boy's height. "First, I'm not important. I'm just an ordinary person who found my purpose. Second, it wasn't easy. It hurt a lot. But I learned our strength doesn't come from never falling. It comes from always getting back up." "What if I'm never good at art?" "Who says you're not good?" "Me. My drawings are ugly." Ethan grabbed a piece of paper and started drawing with the boy. "I'll tell you a secret. There's no such thing as an ugly drawing. Just a drawing that hasn't found its way to express itself yet. Every line you make is unique in the whole world. No one else can do it exactly like you." "Really? Really? And you know what else?" "What?" "The most important talent isn't knowing how to draw. It's knowing how to dream. And you have the greatest talent of all, a generous heart that wants to learn." The boy smiled and went back to drawing with more confidence. Robert watched from a distance and walked over to Catherine. "Look at our son," he said. "He's a natural teacher." "He always was," she replied. "Even as a child, he helped other kids. And now he'll be able to help on a global scale." "I'm so proud of him." "I'm proud of us," Robert said. "We raised a son who chose to use his talent for good, and who remains humble and generous. The values we taught stuck. Forever." Ethan joined his parents. "What are you talking about?" "How proud we are of you," Catherine said. "And I'm proud of us, of everything we've built together." "What have we built?" Robert asked. "We built proof that love and determination can overcome any obstacle. We built a foundation that's already changed thousands of lives. We built an example that transformation is possible." "And what else will we build?" Catherine asked. "Let's build a future where no child is invisible, where every talent is recognized, where education is about shaping complete human beings." "It's a big dream," said Robert. "The best dreams always are," Ethan replied. "And the best dreams always start with a family that believes." "And never stops believing," Catherine added. As the celebration continued around them, Ethan gazed out the window of the foundation. Outside, he could see New York City stretching to the horizon. Somewhere in that vastness, there were other children waiting for their chance to shine. He picked up a piece of paper and began a new drawing. This time, he sketched a map of the entire United States, with tiny stars scattered across the land. Each star represented a child with a talent waiting to be discovered. In the bottom right corner, as always, he drew his signature, the star inside a circle, surrounded by small hearts, with hands reaching out to help other stars shine. But this time, he added something new, a small phrase beneath the signature. "We are all stars. Some just need to learn how to shine." Ethan was ready for the next phase of his mission. College awaited him, but he knew his real education had happened during those 10 years of transformation. From a humiliated boy to an inspiring young man, from an invisible child to a national voice, from a solitary dreamer to a movement leader. Yet deep down, Ethan remained the same, a boy who saw beauty where others saw problems, who turned pain into art, and who believed every human being deserved respect and opportunity. His story had begun with tears in a classroom. Now it continued with smiles in a foundation full of children discovering their own talents. And this was only the beginning of a journey that would change not just his life, but the lives of millions of children across the United States. Because Ethan had learned the most important lesson of all: when we turn our pain into purpose, we don't just heal our own wounds, we become healers for the wounds of others. The end. Now, dear listener, what did you think of Ethan's story? Do you believe he made the right choices along his journey? Share in the comments how this story touched your heart, and if you know any child who deserves to have their talents recognized. Your opinion means so much to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other moving stories like this one. Thank you so much for joining us.